Hello and welcome to a new edition of True Audio Files. So I want to talk today about what COVID has done to the audio and music business, because I think it's kind of had a profound effect on the industry in somewhat of a good way, some not so good, but and definitely good and bad for the music lover out there too. So I think the biggest impacts that I have seen, besides the obvious of having some shortages and maybe not being able to go to record stores as often, and maybe not even being able to go at all for a period of time, because that definitely happened in the early stages of the pandemic, is one thing that I've seen that's been kind of an interesting after effect of people having to stay home more often is their desire to get into physical media, more specifically into records. There seems to have been a huge surge in people's interest in buying and listening to records, more so than it was even back before COVID. Because before COVID, you definitely had a build up, kind of a snowball effect of people starting to really get back into records. But it just seemed to explode after the lockdowns and people wanting to find something to do in their home. And what the after effects of that have become are good or bad. The good parts of it have been, I think you're starting to see a lot more, number one, reissues, but secondly, and more importantly, I think better quality reissues in terms of like the jazz titles specifically. I mean, they've always kind of been there. They started before COVID, but you're starting to see different people introducing jazz reissues more so. Like the labels, I think, are starting to focus more on them. And Blue Note started this thing before COVID, but it's and they've just continued that trend. But now Acoustic Sound / Verve have kind of taken the reins or taken the Blue Note / Tone Poet model and have started to do that on their own as well. And I think was it MFS? I think MFS is another jazz label that I'm starting to see more and more reissues from. And there's been also some other secondary jazz labels too, but jazz specifically is kind of interesting. It's really gotten a resurgence since the beginning of the pandemic. So it's kind of interesting to see that, and it's pretty cool, I think. I mean, I had already started to get heavier into jazz before the pandemic, but now that all these other reissues are starting to come out to make the jazz titles more affordable for everybody, instead of having to try to find the original first pressings or early pressings that go for hundreds of dollars and now more hundreds of dollars, it's been really a nice, refreshing option. The downsides, one of them is one I just kind of hinted at, and that is used records, especially used jazz records, much earlier pressings, have just gone through the roof in terms of pricing and are harder to come by now because everybody wants them. And it's nice that people are showing interest, but it's kind of sucks for those of us who have been collecting records since before the pandemic and wanted to be able to affordably buy used records, and it's now becoming harder and harder to do that. The other thing that has kind of caused some issues because of the popularity of records is pressing plants were having a hard time keeping up as it was before the pandemic, but now there's sort of a perfect storm because I believe a lot of them are not only a little bit shorthanded, but also are getting more requests for pressings. I don't know if this is true or not, but I heard RTI, who is one of the major pressing plants, they're the ones that do all the Mobile Fidelity pressings and some other audiophile stuff. From what I've heard, they've got at least a backup of 6 months, which is just incredible. So if you're wanting to release a new album and you want to get it pressed at RTI, you better plan ahead, way ahead. So if that's truly the case, that's pretty crazy. And I know that other pressing plants are definitely backed up. I just don't think they're quite that backed up, but I think they're at least a couple months backed up across the board. And that has been causing some issues as well, obviously, for people who are trying to produce reissues, and more importantly, people that are trying to put new releases out there. They've had to delay their albums. I know I've got one that I'm making the assumption has been delayed because of the pandemic and the backlog at the pressing plants, and that's KK Downing, who was the original guitarist for Judas Priest. He's coming out with, I think, his first solo album. It's actually called KK's Priests, and it's got, I believe, the what's his Ripper. I can't remember his full name, but the guy that was the vocalist for a short period of time a few years back with Judas Priest is doing the vocals on the album, and KK wrote, I believe, all the songs on it, and it was announced months and months ago, and they've already released, I think, 3 tracks from it, but it got delayed. It was supposed to come out, I think, in August, and they bumped it now to October. So it's been pretty crazy. And the last thing that I really have noticed, and I think a lot of people are noticing, is because you can't always go out to the record stores, or maybe some of those record stores aren't always having the inventory you want, there's been a lot more online shopping and getting items shipped. And because the shipping industry is so overwhelmed right now, there's a couple of things happening with that. The one that I was going towards first was just the fact that a lot of misuse or abuse of the packaging is happening, like bent packages. I have one that I might share a picture of that. It was literally looked like they tried to fit it inside of my mailbox and was just completely bent up. And I didn't really experience that before the pandemic, and I'm starting to experience that now. But the other thing that is happening, and it's gotten better, but it's still an issue, is distribution is having a hard time getting product to the stores in a timely manner. And one big example that I've seen already this week, as a prime example, is one of the reasons why you don't see the Metallica Super Deluxe box set on my back wall here, these are the new releases that came out this week that I purchased, is because not only has Amazon not received their shipment of those box sets yet, but my local record store that I usually buy my stuff from hasn't received them yet either. The weird thing is, and maybe it's not weird, and I'll explain why in a second, is that I know that I have some other record stores in my Facebook timeline that I see that have gotten them, but they're out west, which maybe all of the box sets originated out west. I don't know. Maybe that's why they've gotten them, and I'm here on the east coast of the U.S. and haven't received them yet. So it's pretty interesting that I find that the shipping, as a lot of you may know, if you live in the United States anyways, that shipping is just overwhelmed. Whether it's a shortage of staff or just too much packaging having to get shipped around, and they just can't keep up. I know that, like the post office, for example, not only did they cut employee staff, but cut some of the machinery they had that helped sort mail, because before the pandemic, they were, number one, weren't making money. Well, and they shouldn't be, but they were losing money, I should say. And they were also losing, they weren't getting as much mail being shipped out. But now, since the pandemic, it's exploded and probably brought that part of it back. But they probably do more packages than they do envelopes like they used to. But anyway, because of that explosion of package shipments, it's really created a bottleneck in a lot of places. Especially I think there's a distribution center for music in Chicago area, and there's been a few records that I have purchased from like artist websites and label websites that originate from that area. And I had one, which the Yusuf Lateef One Step, which many of you may be aware of. That one was stuck in that facility for at least a couple weeks, just kind of sat there before it did move, and then finally I got it. But it would basically just sat in that Chicago area distribution center from the post office collecting dust. So anyway, those are a lot of the things I've observed that have changed the music industry in the U.S. anyways because of COVID. Some of it good. I think the popularity of records, I think, is awesome. I think they can be fun. They can be a great experience for a lot of people if you take it as an experience. You know, one example I can give is this, actually. This is the new this is the new Casey Musgraves album. And, you know, it's a very cool experience because, you know, it's cool designed package. And what she's also done is had 3 different color variations available at pretty much any store. And you'll be able to get more details on this on my social media pages because I will be putting some information out on them. But as you can see, this one is red. And there were 3 other colors, but they were all listed as surprise colors, and there were 3 variations. Plus, there was also one on her website and a Target exclusive, and there's probably, who knows, hundreds more. But I think that it's very, I think that the record design is very cool. You know, the die cut set middle that opens up like that is very cool. And, you know, part of the experience, which you can't get that from a streaming service, obviously. And I think a lot of people are starting to realize that if they really love music and they want to experience music, physical copies tend to be the best way. And in my opinion, from an experience side, not necessarily always the sound side, because there's some pressing issues, but, you know, the physical artwork and the bigger artwork, the bigger experience, I think is really nice on records that you don't tend to get as well on CDs. So that's my take on it. I would love to hear what your thoughts are. Have you experienced any other COVID-related issues or positives from the record, you know, the music industry / you know, records and things on that nature? And have you seen any negatives that I haven't mentioned too? I'd love to hear it in the comments section below. If you liked what you see here, please hit that like button. You know, please make some comments if you'd like. Subscribe to my channel. Hit that alert bell. Let me know, or let you know. I keep saying that. Let you know when my new videos come out. So that's what I've got for today. You have yourself an awesome rest of the day.